What's up, everybody? Welcome back, and a big welcome back because it's the most wonderful time of the year. No, not Christmas, because playoff football season is here. Now, it's not as good as it could be for me because my team's not in the playoffs, but I came to terms with that around week 9. So I've known it for a while, and the Super Bowl win from last year does help soothe a little bit of the disappointment, at least. With many exciting and new storylines this year, as there are every year, the one inevitable storyline that comes around every playoff season is back. And because of what happened in last year's divisional round, it's being talked about more than usual. So I started to wonder, instead of hearing about this over and over again, why don't we find out, is this a valid argument or is this just an excuse? So let's find out once and for all, does having a bye week in the first round of the playoffs actually give you an advantage? Or is it a detriment? Now, when I pose this question, the answer seems obvious. Like, duh, yeah, I'd love to not have to play an extra game on the way to a Super Bowl. But it's become a consistent talking point on talk shows, Twitter, and public discourse that maybe having a bye in the first round gives the team a little too much time off and they get a little rusty, while the team that wins in the divisional round gets to continue their rhythm and momentum. This discussion was sparked back up in a big way last year after both one-seeded teams that won the most games in their conference last year, the Packers and the Titans, lost in their first games of the playoffs. The Packers, who went 13-4 during the regular season, would lose to the San Francisco 49ers, as even though their defense played really well, the back-to-back reigning MVP and horse dewormer enjoyer Aaron Rodgers couldn't get his team in the end zone through the air and only led the offense to 10 points. And the Titans would run into the white-hot Bengals, who would beat Tennessee in heartbreaking fashion, as Ryan Tannehill would throw what would be his third interception of the game in the final minutes that would lead, after a 20-yard completion from Joe Burrow to Ja'Marr Chase, to a Bengals game-winning field goal. So when both teams that are supposed to be the best in the league lose before the conference championship game, maybe the people who make this argument have a point, right? Well, 1 year doesn't paint an entire picture. For that, we have to go back. All the way back to 1990. Well, 1991 playoffs, but after the 1990 season, you get the point. This was the first year the NFL expanded the playoffs from 10 teams with 5 in each conference to 12 teams with 6 in each conference, a format that would see the 2 best division winners not have to play a game in the first round. Of course, this was also expanded in 2020 from 12 teams to 14 teams, so now only the top teams in each conference get a bye. 1991 saw the 49ers, who were on the hunt for their 3rd straight Super Bowl alongside the New York Giants in the NFC with the bye weeks. And in the AFC were future Hall of Famers Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, Bruce Smith, and Andre Reed, and the Bills alongside the Los Angeles Raiders. And it's not a good start for the anti-bye weekers, as not only did all 4 teams win, all 4 won convincingly. Buffalo put up 44 points on Dan Marino's Dolphins. LA took care of the 9-7 Bengals 20-10. The Giants dismantled the Bears 31-3, and the 49ers handled the Washington Redskins. Whoa. That was weird. The defending champs won 28-10. Unrelated, but holy shit, the Bills beat the Raiders 51-3 in a playoff game? When I initially saw that, I was like, how? But looking into it, the game against the Bengals that the Raiders played was the game that ended Bo Jackson's career. So when you lose your best player, I can kind of see, if you get in the hole, the team might kind of give up. And I'm guessing that's what happened. On to 92, and all 4 teams at the bye, Denver, Detroit, Buffalo, and Washington, won their games, and pretty convincingly at that once again, with the exception of Denver, who won on a last-minute field goal against the Oilers. 1993 would finally take us to our first instance of a team with a bye week losing in their first playoff game. While the 49ers and Cowboys would both cruise to victories in the NFC, and the Dolphins would shut out the Chargers after the Chargers had just shut out the Chiefs in the game before that, the Steelers would not get this same fate as the other bye week teams. Although this game, serving as the first example of the bye week not being advantageous, is a little bit questionable in and of itself, because the Steelers ended up having to face the Bills, who were coming off back-to-back Super Bowl appearances and finished with the same record as the Steelers on the season. And probably more importantly, even though their Pro Bowl starting quarterback Neil O'Donnell did play in the game, he missed the last 3.5 games of the regular season with an injury. But he powered through the injury because of how bad backup Bubby Brister had played in those last 3.5 games. but it seemed like he obviously wasn't 100% as he threw for only 163 yards and 2 picks. 1994, San Francisco in Steve Young's first official takeover year would destroy the Giants 44-3. Dallas, on the way to winning their second straight Super Bowl, would handle welfare fund Steeler Brett Favre and his Packers, and Buffalo would take care of the Raiders 29-23 on the way to their 4th straight Super Bowl loss. But Kansas City in Joe Montana's last good season would take down the 12-4 Oilers in the Astrodome in what would ultimately be that franchise's last playoff game before they moved to Tennessee. 1995, all 4 bye-week teams won, with all but San Diego winning in blowouts. 96 would actually see 2 top seeds for the first time in the new format lose their first playoff games. Steve Young and the 49ers built too big of a hole to dig out of against the Packers, and the 13-3 Chiefs, who were the best team during the regular season, fall 10-7 in Arrowhead to Jim Harbaugh, the QB, not the coach yet, and his 9-7 Colts that barely snuck into the playoffs. But still, even after this season, the record of the teams who have home field advantage in the bye in their first playoff game is 20-4. With all the teams making it to the Super Bowl, in the exception of the Bills once, being a 1 or 2 seed. And all the champs have been 1 or 2 seeds. Alright, this is taking too long. We gotta start speeding through these because we got a lot of years left. 1997, the Jags, in only their second year of existence, would stun the NFL world with a 30-27 defeat of the 13-3 Denver Broncos. But other than that, Green Bay, Carolina, and New England would all win their games. 1998, San Francisco and Green Bay would take care of business while Pittsburgh scraped by. But Denver was once again involved in an upset, this time on the opposite end though, as they would take down the top-seeded Chiefs 14-10. But if we look with some critical eyes, the Broncos only lost 1 more game throughout the regular season, and the Kansas City Chiefs had Elvis Grbac, an aging Marcus Allen, and Andre Rison up against the Broncos' John Elway, Terrell Davis, and Shannon Sharps, who were all future Hall of Famers. And they would go on to win the Super Bowl as the first team that didn't get a bye to do so in the new format. 99, all 4 teams would win their playoff matchups after the bye for the first time in 3 years. The turn of the century would see only Tennessee win as the underdog, as even though they had the same record as Indianapolis, they only missed out on that first round bye because Jacksonville went 14-2. They would go on to not just beat Indianapolis, but go on to beat Jacksonville and make it to the Super Bowl, where they would lose by a literal inch to the St. Louis Rams. In 2001, while 3 of 4 teams that received the bye won, and pretty comfortably at that, the Ravens as the 4 seed would roll into Tennessee and win 24-10 on their way to a Super Bowl win on the back of their legendary defense, as they only allowed 23 points total in 4 playoff games. We'll slow down here to recognize that this might be a good starting point for the anti-bye-weekers argument, as falling 1 game short of a division win allowed the Ravens to carry a 7-game win streak into the playoffs. Although I do think it's also important to mention that during that 7-game win streak to end the regular season, they also had a bye week. 2002 would once again be 3-1, with only the Eagles causing the divisional round upset of the Bears, although starting quarterback Jim Miller did separate his shoulder during the game and had to exit. 03, all 4 would win at home, but 04 would see 2 3 seeds take down 2 seeds, with Peyton Manning and the Colts taking down the Chiefs, and Carolina ending what was remaining of the greatest show on turf's last stand. Moving to 2005 takes us to another season of all 4 bye-week teams winning, but 2006 was a different story. Not only would 2 teams with a first-round bye lose, them being the Bears and the Colts, but the Steelers would go through the 14-2 Colts, would beat the 13-3 Broncos and the 13-3 Seahawks to win Super Bowl 40. The same would happen in 2007 with 2 underdogs, the Colts and the Patriots, taking down the 1-seed Chargers and 2-seed Ravens in the divisional, with the Colts going on to win the Super Bowl, becoming the 3rd team in 7 years to not receive a first-round bye and go on to win the Super Bowl. Add a 4th to that, as the Giants would take down division winner Cowboys, along with the Chargers beating the Colts in the divisional. Chargers would lose in the AFC Championship, but even the undefeated 18-0 Patriots couldn't stop the G-Men and NFL legend David Tyree. 2009, for the first time since the new playoff format was initiated back in 1990, 3 teams who received first-round byes would lose their first playoff games. This was probably around the period of years where people were starting to make this argument. It was starting to make waves in the media, and maybe for good reason. Maybe it has some validity now. 2010, the Colts, Saints, and Vikings returned the top teams to somewhat normalcy, winning their first games in the playoffs, but the Jets did beat the Chargers in San Diego, led by Mark Sanchez, so somewhat normalcy. and would do so again, this time to the 14-2 Patriots, who had just finished the season on an 8-game win streak, along with the 6-seeded Packers defeating the Falcons on the way to winning Super Bowl 45. In 2012, it would be those same Packers as the 1 seed who would be the only team who received the bye to lose their first playoff matchup. They would lose to the eventual champion New York Giants, who came in as a 6 seed, and those Giants would go on to be the 6th team in 12 years now to win the Super Bowl as a team that did not get the bye. And Baltimore would be the 7th and 13 after beating Manning and the Broncos in double OT on the way to 34-31, lights out Super Bowl victory. The 49ers in 2014 and the Colts in 2015 would be the only underdogs to beat the bye week teams, but wouldn't do much after that. 2016 there were none, 2017 the Packers beat the Cowboys and the Steelers beat the Chiefs, but neither made the Super Bowl. 2018 Jacksonville beat Pittsburgh, 2019 there were no upsets, but 2020 the Ravens and Lamar Jackson's MVP season would disappoint in a big way in their first playoff game, losing to the Titans 28-12. 2021 was a switch to 14 teams in the playoffs, so only the Chiefs and Packers got byes, and both teams won their first games. And finally, like we talked about earlier, the reason this discourse has been recycled again, 2022, both the Titans and Packers as the 1 seed lost their first and only playoff games. Damn, that took way longer than I thought. Yes, while in the 2000s there were quite a few teams that were not top 2 seeds that would go on to win the Lombardi, overall there were far more teams that started with a week off and got to play one less game that would go on to win the Super Bowl. And ultimately, since the 1990-91 season, teams that had a bye week in the wildcard round were 85-33 in the divisional round. And logically, this just makes sense, because not only does getting a bye week mean that you get an extra week of rest and an extra week to prepare for your opponent, getting a bye week in the playoffs also means that you're hosting the game. Teams at home since 1990 win 57.24% of their games. Not to mention good franchises like the Packers, Steelers, and Patriots win close to or above 70% of their home games. And to directly address the point that a bye week makes you rusty while the other team gets to keep rolling, since 2003, NFL teams in the regular season and playoffs are 725, 613, and 4 in games after a bye, a 54.19 win percentage following a week off. Most players in the NFL would probably tell you that getting a week off does their body a ton of good and also gives their coaches and their teammates extra time to prepare plays for their next opponent. Can some teams get complacent? Sure, maybe. But a well-coached team shouldn't. And a team that's in a bye spot is probably a pretty well-coached team. Then what about last year, you might be saying, holding on to your last possible thread in this argument? Is it possible that last year the Packers and Titans maybe just weren't that good? Look, I'm not saying that they were so bad that they shouldn't have been in the playoffs, but it was consensus around the league that a team like the Titans overachieved in a bad division, while teams that we expected to win a few more games like the Chiefs and the Bills kind of underachieved, lost a few more games than we thought, but were still better teams overall going into the playoffs. And the stats back this up too, not just the eye test. The Titans had an average margin of victory of 3.8. That wasn't even the best in their division. That would be the Colts with an MOV of plus 5.1, even though they went 9-8. It was worse than the Bengals at 4.9, Chiefs at 6.8, and Bills at 11.4. It was the worst margin of victory by a division winner that year. You want to know who was second worst? The Packers at 4.6. The Rams, Bucks, and Cowboys all had a better one. And I know margin of victory isn't an exact determinant of who the better team is, but it helps to paint a better picture of if a team may be over or underperformed. And I think last year was an outlier year, where some teams overperformed and the better teams underperformed a little bit during the regular season. But the playoffs do tend to bring the best out of a great team. And I think you only have to look at what those two teams did this season to see that they came back down to earth. I know both teams lost their best receivers, and that's no small loss considering they're both top 10 receivers in the league, but both teams missed the playoffs this season, and I don't think either team does all that much better if Davante Adams or AJ Brown were still on the teams. Maybe just a couple more wins and a 7 seed in the playoffs. So that brings us to this season. What'll happen with the Chiefs and the Eagles in the divisional? Well, to me, I don't think either team is a fluke team. Both are second in their conferences in MOV, have great QBs and solid enough defenses. Are the Eagles going to lose to a team quarterbacked by Daniel Jones? I love Brian Daboll, but probably not. Are the Chiefs and Pat Mahomes going to lose to Okay, so this idiot's about to say the Chargers, not the Jaguars. I recorded this on Saturday during the game, and the last score I saw was 27-0 Chargers. So I recorded 2 other takes for the 2 other teams the Chiefs could possibly face, but didn't even bother for the Jags because I didn't think there was any way the Chargers could charger a 27-0 lead, but obviously I should have known better. Chargers team they've already beaten twice this year? Also, probably not. But then again, it is the NFL, and on any given Sunday, something crazy could happen. So, I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see. Thanks for watching, guys. That's the end of the video. Like, subscribe if you enjoyed the content. Let me know anything you want to let me know down in the comments, whether you agree, disagree, just want to say what's up. I appreciate all the support I've been getting. It's a slow growth right now, but we're on the way, and I've really been enjoying doing this. So I appreciate any support I've been getting. And yeah, that's the end of the video. Enjoy the NFL playoffs, guys.